Thank you, sir. Honorable Speaker and members of this August Parliament, I rise to thank His Excellency the President for his most gracious speech on 30th of November 2020. As we move into a new year in the Fijian Parliament, the message from His Excellency is indeed one that should set the focus for us as representatives of the Fijian people. The year that has gone was not the easiest for us as parliamentarians, and it was obviously because of the unprecedented situation we are faced with. A situation that demanded quick decisions, critical thinking, proper reasoning, and compassion for our people unlike ever before. A situation that not only threatened us at the given time, but also threatens our well-being into the future. On the outset, I must thank the Honorable Prime Minister especially for his visionary, dynamic, and compassionate leadership at a time that demanded only urgent solutions. I'm glad to say that with a leader like him steering the Fijian government and the nation forward, the Fijian government will never forego the interests and welfare of its people in favor of petty politics. Today, more Fijians than usual are in need of financial support, and government did not at any point forget or neglect the fact that the most vulnerable will be the worst affected. At a time when incoming revenue is limited and cuts had to be made in every possible budget line, the allocation to the Ministry of Women, Children and Poverty Alleviation received a demand-based increase. In his speech, His Excellency clearly outlined the key priorities of the Fijian government through this August Parliament, which are the containment of COVID-19, our economy's recovery, and our response to the climate, oceans, and biodiversity crisis. I must say that there's absolutely nothing that could be more important than these three things at this point in time for us to prioritize. These three situations are indeed the underlying causes of many other social problems that our society is faced with right now. I support His Excellency's call on us to begin work for the next 50 years with this new session, and this includes work that can change mindsets, work that can change the way we treat each other, work that can make human equality and dignity a norm and not something we must have to fight for. Mr. Speaker, sir, a COVID-19 outbreak in Fiji would have disproportionately affected women and girls, with women at increased risk of infection, intimate partner violence, job losses, and vulnerable work if we had failed to contain the virus in the time that we did. Historically, climate change policies did not address the differing ways in which climate change affected men and women. Given existing gender inequalities and development gaps, climate change ultimately places a greater burden on women. Men and women are affected by climate change in different ways because of the societal and cultural roles and responsibilities expected of them by families and communities. Understanding that climate change impacts men and women differently, it is necessary to ensure that we have gender-sensitive climate policies that are informed by women and address the realities of women's needs. The government of Fiji, and especially our Honorable Prime Minister, has given high priority to the global climate agenda and aims to continue the momentum for action since the entry into force of the Paris Agreement. At COP23 in 2017, we achieved new heights with the adoption of the Gender Action Plan. Honorable Speaker, at this juncture, I wish to thank the Government of Australia and the United Nations World Food Programme, who through two different sets of direct aid to the Ministry, helped in providing cash top-ups for our beneficiaries. Over $7 million from DFAT was a direct cash top-up of $100 per month to beneficiaries under selected social protection programs. The assistance from the World Food Programme was directed specifically to those recipients who live in areas affected by Cyclone Harold. Honorable Speaker, real progress on human development is not only a matter of enlarging people's choices to lead a healthy, long life, to be educated, and to enjoy a decent standard of living. It is also about ensuring that these choices are secure. And that requires us to understand and tackle vulnerability. Those who are particularly vulnerable, such as the poor and other disadvantaged groups, who do not have the same resilience when there is any form of instability. There are two basic propositions. One, that people's vulnerability is influenced by their levels of capacities, such as health, education, income, personal security, and their social position. The other is that failures to protect people against vulnerability are often a consequence of inadequate policies and poor social institutions. The Fijian government recognizes this well, and I'm glad that the ministry forms an important part of the latter for fellow Fijians. I wish to thank the Honourable Minister for Economy for ensuring that this mandate of the ministry is not compromised, but rather slightly readjusted for the new year. Effective social protection systems are crucial to safeguarding the poor and vulnerable when crisis hits. While we can boast of having political will to continue the Fijian government's social protection programs, the times we're presently in are demanding us to leverage the existing social protection system to help families and businesses restore income and preserve livelihoods. It demands from us to enhance the preparedness of our social protection systems and build resilience against future crises. Keeping this in mind, we have just completed drafting Fiji's first ever interim targeted social protection policy, which of course we will build on in the very near future. Honorable Speaker, in terms of social protection programs, we continue to provide the following. Social pension scheme, which has been allocated over $55 million, targets the elderly of 65 years and over who have never received a pension or superannuation. At present, there are 45,000 recipients in the scheme, and the number continues to increase, exceeding projections. The Poverty Benefit Scheme, which targets the poorest of the poor and has been allocated $38.3 million. There are 25,000 families being assisted under this scheme at the moment. The Care and Protection Allowance, allocated $12 million, assists single-parented children from poor households. Currently, there are 8,000 households being assisted under this program. This scheme is for a duration of 5 years. However, some families continue to be assisted through the scheme until the children turn 18 years old. The Bus Fare Concession Program currently assists over 52,000 elderly persons over 60 years old, and persons with disabilities has been allocated $6.5 million. The Rural Pregnant Mothers Program has assisted 3,279 rural pregnant mothers since the inception of the program in 2014 and has been allocated $1.2 million this year. The Disability Allowance Scheme, which has been allocated $9 million, is given to a person with a functional disability. There are 8,000 recipients assisted under this scheme. Mr. Speaker, sir, Honorable Charlotte Rondrondo spoke extensively about the Women's Plan of Action yesterday. As a former director for women, she should know that the Women's Plan of Action expired last year. It was for the term 2010 to 2019. The work of the ministry is now guided by a new 5-year strategic plan. This upcoming year is a year of great efforts that government, through the ministry, is pulling together with funding support from the governments of New Zealand, Australia, European Union, and Canada, with technical expertise from UN Women, and of course the Australian government-funded gender advisor to the Fijian government. The National Women's Machinery, through a transformative ambition to focus on policies, will do bulk of the work around elimination of violence against women and girls, women in leadership, women's economic empowerment, gender and climate action, and women's access to services. The 3 major initiatives for the National Women's Machinery in this upcoming year are the National Action Plan on preventing violence against all women and girls. The national consultations were launched by the Honorable Prime Minister last month as we embarked on 16 days of activism against gender-based violence. The National Action Plan is a whole-of-government, evidence-based, measurable, inclusive, and funded 5-year plan with an emphasis on stopping violence before it starts. The Gender Transformative Institutional Capacity Building. On the 6th of February 2020, Cabinet endorsed a whole-of-government, gender transformative institutional capacity development initiative to be led by the ministry. The initiative is designed in response to challenges such as limited awareness, knowledge, and technical skills on gender transformative concepts and application of technical tools, including gender analysis, gender responsive planning, and budgeting across government institutions, shortage of context and sector-specific knowledge products, and the need for a comprehensive and coordinated institutional capacity development mechanism or structure and intervention. The third initiative, Honorable Speaker, is the Republic of Fiji Country Gender Assessment, a key report to be undertaken periodically by the ministry to inform on the status of women and girls in Fiji and provide a comprehensive overview of gender issues in all sectors. This initiative is in response to the Government of Fiji's commitment to the promotion of gender equality and women's empowerment, as well as to meet the needs of line ministries in the formulation of gender-responsive policies and programs in their respective sectors. The Country Gender Assessment will highlight the many achievements made to date, as well as the remaining challenges, and will provide comprehensive policy guidelines and recommendations for policymakers across government to deepen our collective efforts for promoting gender equality and women and girls' empowerment. The coronavirus has changed many aspects of our lives. Pandemics do affect men and women, boys and girls, and marginalized groups such as the elderly, persons living with disabilities, and children differently, as they often magnify all existing inequalities. While everyone is facing unprecedented challenges due to the COVID-19 pandemic, women have had to cope the impact of what the UN Secretary-General calls a shadow pandemic of violence against women and girls. I said it in this August House before in the past, and I'll repeat it at every opportunity. Violence against women and girls is preventable, and if all get involved, make it our business to talk about it, to condemn it, to challenge the patriarchal foundation that upholds it, to raise children with good values, to stop blaming victims, to break the silence, we will make the change. We will make this country a country where a woman can always feel safe. To my friends on the other side of the House, stop asking us what we are doing. In this new year, tell us how you will support the cause. The speech by His Excellency has been a perfect reflection on the power of unity, especially when he said, and I quote, "In a truly patriotic whole-of-nation effort, we achieved what few countries could. We contained the virus," unquote. Honorable Speaker, I couldn't agree more. The same whole-of-nation effort is indeed and truly the answer to end many social ills that we are faced with at this day and age. A few weeks back, every member on that side of the House was invited to attend a launch by the Honorable Prime Minister of the national consultations for our first national action plan to prevent violence against women and girls. Something we should all support and be proud about, being the only second nation in the world to venture into the consolidation of a whole-of-nation, evidence-based, measurable, inclusive, and funded 5-year national action plan. Only 2 members of the opposition turned up, Honorable Rotemu Mukapa and Honorable Biman Prasad. So maybe if the Honorable Ngerengere Tambua had attended, she would have found out that the House of Chameleon is a member of the technical working group that will drive this initiative forward. And if Honorable Salote Rondrongo had attended, she would have found out that this initiative is not an initiative only of the Honorable Prime Minister, the Honorable Minister of Economy, and myself. The technical working group that will be driving this initiative comprises of both government and non-government organizations, with secretariat support from the UN Women, the Ministry, and civil society organizations. Honorable Charlotte Rondronro yesterday also referred to the need for a bipartisan approach to address violence against women and girls, referring to 2 motions they had proposed for a special parliamentary committee and for a commission of inquiry. Why do they propose a bipartisan approach to these issues when they don't even turn up to initiatives where government is working in conjunction with critical national stakeholders who are actually making an effort in their everyday work to address these issues? In fact, Mr. Speaker, we had received an email from the opposition office to advise that only Honorable Rotemu Mukapa, Honorable Itiengioni Baravi, Honorable Salote Rondronro, and Honorable Tambuya will be attending the launch. And we all know only Honorable Rotemu Mukapa and Honorable Biman Prasad turned up on the day. But that email, Honorable Speaker, also speaks volumes about the mindsets that exist in our society when it comes to talking about violence against women and girls.
Order. 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 Order.
In our role as parliamentarians, we must always emphasize that violence against women is not only a woman's issue, it is a human rights issue. From this side of the House, you will see the Honorable Prime Minister himself picking up the mantle when it comes to gender-based violence. Honorable Salote Rondronro rightly stated that the National Action Plan will not include boys and asks the question, who will look after the boy victim? This is coming from a former director for women in the Ministry mandated with the task of looking after not only women, but also children. Somebody who should know about the Child Welfare Act and its provisions in relation to the protection of all children, boys and girls. Somebody who must also know the great disparity in numbers between the two sexes when it comes to victims of gender-based violence, and why we as a government and as a nation need policies and programs specifically targeted at women and girls. I'm encouraged by government's legislative agenda for the new year, as stated by His Excellency the President. I refer specifically to the Child Justice Bill and the Child Care and Protection Bill. Progressive laws such as these show yet again government's resolute focus on ensuring that solid and positive legal foundations are in place for vulnerable groups in our society. The Child Care and Protection Bill will aim to replace the very archaic child protection sections of the Juveniles Act, providing a more comprehensive framework for child welfare services, and in particular, to better guide the work of the ministry in preventing and responding to child abuse. The Child Justice Bill will aim to replace sections of the Juveniles Act, which deals with children in conflict with the law, and provide a comprehensive framework for the special treatment of children at all stages of the criminal justice process, from the point of the initial contact with the police through to trial, rehabilitation, and reintegration. We continue to work closely with all our stakeholders in the various sectors, and I take this time to thank all of those that particularly work with the ministry. The one thing any crisis can teach us is that we can overcome anything if we work in unison. I must also take this time to thank all those Fijians who took it upon themselves to help fellow Fijians in these trying times. And there's no better commemoration of our 50 years of independence that today, with all our diversities, we remain one. Honorable Speaker, His Excellency had said, and I quote, "Our commitment to remain COVID-contained must be ingrained in all of the work of this august Parliament," unquote, and I fully agree. I wish to conclude by saying that the most vulnerable Fijians have a greater battle than the transmission of COVID-19, and that is the direct and indirect implications of the pandemic and all our climate-related crises. When it comes to times like these, we as a Parliament must put our differences aside. Our focus should be our people, and only our people. The battle at hand is greater than just containment. The real work now lies in building back and building back better. I thank His Excellency for his most gracious speech, and I wish you, Mr. Speaker, sir, a very blessed Christmas and New Year, and I also extend the same well wishes to all members of this august Parliament. I thank you.